a very important aspect in this movie is what value is to each. To the Nahuas, in particular, through Tepiltzin's interest in the codex and crafting this history, as well as the journey to the temple to offer to the Mother Goddess, shows how important this was in a religious context. And after the events of the sacrifice, where the Spaniards are asking for gold, and the Nahuas translate that as asking for the most valuable thing they have, which they considered as the codex. It is very significant that the Spaniards end up having no regard for it and burning it, and ultimately demonstrates the different values that they have, and especially considering that the Spaniards believed that in the context of being in a temple, that gold was a relevant item. It just goes to show the cultural differences.
So the next scene that we thought was really important, there were two of them. The first is when Hernan Cortez first meets Tepiltzin, who he names Tomas. And then through the translations of Tuquixpoch, who is named Doña Isabel, he is trying to kind of tell Tomas, as he names him, what his place in this new society is going to be, and to really follow it. And he uses religion extensively to kind of prove his point that he's the one that's superior and he's the one that's going to dominate the Nahuas. So the way that they kind of name the Nahuas in a different way, in a Spanish way, kind of shows how they're trying to impose their own will, trying to erase the identities of the previous cultures that existed in that place, and then restore it with their new one. And then this goes on to the whipping scene, where it's kind of symbolic of the power of religion being used to whip Tomas into a new shape, where even Friar Diego can't look at this. And at the end, you can even see the Virgin Mary, when she comes down, begins to cry, as this is not the intended use of religion in Friar Diego's eyes.
So I'm going to talk about the colonization of sexuality, particularly in relation to the relationship between Cortez and Tecuichpoch. So there's a very strange power dynamic going on, where Cortez, for him, it's kind of a love affair, and for Tecuichpoch, it's pretty much non-consensual. In many ways, she is getting held against her will and raped. And what's strange about it is that relationship is seen, according to Western standards, as the norm. By way of contrast, we have the weird relationship by Western standards of Tepiltzin with his half-sister, which would be seen as incest and completely morally wrong. But that relationship actually is much more about love. It has much more love and intimacy within it, and so it's just kind of representative of the fact that the Spaniards dictated the norms of sexuality and love.
So one thing I wanted to talk about was the difference in experiences of religion, particularly experiences of the same religion, between the Spanish and the Nahua, simply due to the cultural differences, how it seems impossible that these two groups could interpret the same religion, in this context being Christianity, as that's what the Spanish were trying to impose onto the Nahua in the same way. We read in class, in addition, that description of the description of the death of Jesus Christ from the Nahua, which it was from the Maya? I don't remember. Which interpreted it so differently while being about the same event, because you're coming from a very distinct cultural background. And that is very much sort of a theme in this movie of the question of religious interpretation and who can you truly sort of convert someone coming from an entirely different framework of what religion is. And you also kind of see some ideas of religious syncretism in there, how he equates in many ways the Virgin Mary with the Aztec Mother Goddess, almost as if they were aspects of the same thing, or as if they were in fact the same entity. So it's a really interesting sort of perspective on religion and the lack of universality of religion.